Now we're going to have a look at the LFOs. We'll switch on LFO 1. So LFO stands for low frequency oscillator, and it's the same as another oscillator in that it creates waveforms, but it's waveforms that we can't actually hear. All we can hear is the effect they have on other parameters on the synthesizer. And they were originally added to synthesizers to allow us to create the kind of real world kind of sound phenomenon that we associate with, musical instruments and sound within the environment. I'm thinking things like vibrato, tremolo, and wah-wah and things like that. So it allows you to create kind of cyclical movement within the sound. Now, they're called low frequency oscillators because they operate below the human hearing range. So we hear from 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz, or at least we do when we're very small and got perfect hearing. As we get older, our hearing kind of bandwidth narrows a little bit, but the LFOs operate below that range because even at 20 cycles per second, which is the lowest pitch we could hear, that's still pretty fast to create movement in the sound. Because once we get into that audible range, actually the kind of movement becomes, or the waveforms become so fast that we interpret them as being a pitch sound rather than a slower kind of evolving movement. That's why they're called low frequency oscillators, because they operate so low in pitch. Okay, so we need to actually route your LFOs to affect something. So we'll assign the LFO within the mod matrix. So we'll come down to here, place LFO 1 in, then we'll route it to the filter, which is always an obvious one. And then we'll take the amount all the way up, and then let's bring up the LFO rate, which is going to start introducing, well, actually, when it's all the way down to the bottom, we have very, very slow rate. As we increase that, we'll start to hear that being a bit faster. So we can hear that at work now. So that's a classic sound of LFO modulation. Now we have different waveform types here. We have a sine wave. We have a sawtooth wave. We have a triangle wave. Square wave. And then a kind of sample and hold, which is more of a random waveform. You can hear it doesn't really have any order to it. It's very random sounding. Okay, let's put it back onto the sine wave. Now we can sync the LFO to the project tempo, and you can see here now works in beats and bars. Or we can have it free running. And we can also choose to speed up the LFO as we play higher up on the keyboard. So you can hear that changing as you play higher and lower on the keyboard. Now we can have this set up in free mode, and what you'll hear now is every time we press a key in free mode, we're going to trigger a different position within the LFO cycle. Let's make it a bit slower. So you can hear that rise and fall every time I press a key. If we take that off free, now we're always starting the LFO from the same point of its cycle. So it gives you a bit more of a consistent attack. Now the next option we have is delay. And this allows us to delay the onset of the LFO. So you can hear that now. We can do that in free mode in seconds. And if we're synced, we can actually do it to the project tempo. So let's say we wanted a 16th note delay on a half note triplet, or a quarter note. So you can see you can set that up to actually work in terms of beats and bars. And that is the LFO section. You can see they're both identical. So having gone through LFO 1, we know exactly what the parameters are of LFO 2. So to recap, the rate control is the speed of the LFO. We talked a bit about what LFOs are, different wave shapes, the sine wave, sawtooth, triangle, square, sample and hold. We can sync to project tempo, or we can have it free running. We can choose to have the LFO change its speed relative to the key. We can also have it free running. So every time we press a key, it's going to trigger a different part of the LFO cycle, or it can be triggering the same point every single time we press a key. And as I said, the delay control delays the onset of the LFO. It can be locked to project tempo in sync mode, or just done in seconds if we're not in sync mode. So now we've covered the LFOs. In the next video, we're going to have a look at our envelopes over here. So I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.